Welcome to this insightful journey through one of the most revered texts in Buddhism, the Dhammapada. Today we're going to focus on chapters 6 through 10, where the Buddha provides profound wisdom that guides us from wisdom to the consequences of evil. These chapters are filled with teachings that reveal how our thoughts, words, and actions shape our lives and ultimately influence our spiritual journey. In today's video, we'll explore how the Buddha's wisdom can help us overcome suffering, cultivate inner peace, and avoid the pitfalls that lead to a life of harm and suffering. Whether you are a long-time practitioner or someone new to Buddhist teachings, these lessons offer valuable insights on how to live a more peaceful, compassionate, and enlightened life. The Buddha's teachings in these chapters highlight how wisdom, when properly understood, acts as a shield against the destructive forces of greed, hatred, and delusion. Yet, it's important to recognize that wisdom alone is not enough. It must be paired with right action and a compassionate heart. As we navigate through these chapters, we'll explore the transformative power of wisdom and how the Buddha urges us to avoid evil while cultivating a life of virtue and compassion. Let's dive into the Buddha's teachings in chapters 6 to 10 and see how they can help us navigate the complexities of life. Chapter 6. The Wise. The Buddha begins. Chapter 6 by emphasizing the importance of wisdom, an essential foundation for a peaceful and fulfilling life. Wisdom, in the Buddhist context, goes beyond mere intellectual knowledge. It is the insight into the true nature of reality, the ability to see things as they are, without distortion or attachment. This wisdom arises from understanding the impermanence of life, the suffering that comes from attachment, and the path to liberation. In this chapter, the Buddha encourages us to cultivate wisdom through mindfulness, meditation, and self-reflection. He teaches that wisdom is the antidote to ignorance and that true wisdom is not gained through intellectual study alone. Instead, it comes through direct experience and the practice of ethical living. The wise person, according to the Buddha, is someone who is not swayed by fleeting desires or superficial appearances, but who acts from a deep understanding of the nature of existence. The Buddha contrasts the wise with the unwise, who live their lives driven by passions, greed, and ignorance. The unwise person may accumulate wealth, power, or status, but these things do not lead to lasting happiness. In contrast, the wise person seeks spiritual understanding, developing a deeper connection with the true nature of the world and their own mind. Through wisdom, we learn to navigate life's challenges with clarity and equanimity. The wise person is not disturbed by external circumstances, but responds with calm and insight. Wisdom allows us to understand the root causes of suffering, and by understanding those causes, we can begin to free ourselves from them. Wisdom teaches us to recognize that suffering is a natural part of life, and by accepting it and understanding its causes, we can begin to transcend it. Transformative takeaway. Wisdom is not just about knowledge, but about understanding. As we cultivate wisdom in our lives, we open the door to peace, freedom, and liberation. By reflecting on our actions, thoughts, and choices, we begin to align ourselves with truth and understanding, which leads us toward a life of inner peace. Chapter 7. The Venerable. In Chapter 7, the Buddha speaks about the qualities of a venerable person. The term venerable refers to someone who has earned respect through their virtue, wisdom, and conduct. The venerable person is not defined by external markers, such as wealth or social status, but by their inner qualities, qualities that are cultivated through spiritual practice and ethical living. The Buddha stresses that the venerable person lives a life of humility and compassion. They do not seek praise or recognition, but act selflessly, with a heart full of compassion for all beings. Their actions inspire others not because of their external accomplishments, but because of their inner peace and kindness. The venerable person is someone who leads by example, living in a way that encourages others to seek the same path of virtue and wisdom. The Buddha encourages us to cultivate these qualities within ourselves. To be venerable is to live with integrity, to act with kindness and compassion, and to be free from the need for recognition. The true measure of our worth lies not in how others see us, but in the purity of our intentions and the integrity of our actions. As we reflect on the qualities of the venerable person, we are invited to ask ourselves, are we living with integrity? Do we act with kindness and compassion, regardless of how others may perceive us? The Buddha reminds us that our actions, when guided by wisdom and compassion, will inspire others to follow the same path. Transformative takeaway. The path of the venerable person is one of humility, integrity, and compassion. By living with these qualities, we not only improve our own lives, but also become a source of inspiration and guidance for others. This is the true path to respect and honor. Chapter 8. The Thousands. In Chapter 8, the Buddha discusses the concept of merit and the importance of good deeds. However, he makes it clear that it is not the quantity of our good actions that matters, but the quality of our intentions. A single act of kindness, done with sincerity and a pure heart, is more valuable than 1,000 ceremonial rites or empty gestures. The Buddha emphasizes that it is the inner motivation behind our actions that determines their true worth. The Buddha urges us to focus on cultivating virtuous actions that arise from a pure heart, rather than simply seeking to accumulate merit through superficial means. It is not enough to go through the motions of religious practice or charity. We must act from a place of deep sincerity and compassion. By performing good deeds with mindfulness and a genuine desire to help others, we accumulate true merit, which leads to spiritual growth. This merit is not just for the benefit of others, but for our own liberation as well. Through acts of kindness, we purify our minds, accumulate good karma, and move closer to enlightenment. Transformative takeaway. The value of our actions lies not in how many we perform, but in how sincerely and mindfully we perform them. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the potential to create lasting positive change in our lives and the lives of others. Chapter 9. The Evil. In Chapter 9, the Buddha shifts his focus to the nature of evil. Evil, in the Buddhist sense, refers to unwholesome thoughts, actions, and intentions that arise from ignorance, greed, hatred, and delusion. These negative qualities are the root causes of suffering, both for ourselves and for others. The Buddha teaches that evil actions are not the result of external forces, but of the internal states of mind. When we are driven by desires, anger, or ignorance, we create suffering for ourselves and others. This suffering is not limited to physical harm. It also includes mental and emotional suffering, which can be far more destructive. The Buddha explains that the path to liberation is through the purification of the mind. By cultivating mindfulness, awareness, and compassion, we can uproot the seeds of evil and replace them with wholesome thoughts and actions. The Buddha encourages us to examine our minds regularly and to purify them of any harmful tendencies. Through the practice of wisdom and compassion, we learn to recognize the signs of evil within ourselves and take steps to transform them. The Buddha emphasizes that the greatest evil is ignorance, for it is through ignorance that we are led astray. By understanding the true nature of our thoughts and actions, we can overcome evil and live a life of peace and harmony. Transformative takeaway. To overcome evil, we must first recognize it within ourselves. By cultivating mindfulness and understanding, we can purify our minds and actions, replacing negative tendencies with positive qualities like compassion, kindness, and wisdom. Chapter 10. Violence. In Chapter 10, the Buddha speaks about the destructive nature of violence. Violence, whether physical, verbal, or mental, creates harm and perpetuates suffering. The Buddha teaches that non-violence, ahimsa, is the antidote to violence. Non-violence is not merely the absence of physical harm, but the cultivation of kindness and compassion in all aspects of our lives. The Buddha urges us to be mindful of our words, thoughts, and actions, ensuring that they do not cause harm to others. Verbal violence, such as harsh words or gossip, can be just as damaging as physical violence. Mental violence, such as hatred, jealousy, or ill will, also creates suffering, both for ourselves and others. The practice of non-violence begins with the mind. By cultivating loving kindness and compassion, we learn to respond to others with empathy and understanding rather than anger or hatred. The Buddha teaches that only love and kindness can overcome the destructive forces of violence. Transformative takeaway. True strength lies not in the ability to harm others, but in the ability to show kindness and compassion even in the face of difficulty. By practicing non-violence, we not only transform ourselves, but also contribute to the healing of the world around us. Chapters 6 to 10 of the Dhammapada guide us through the journey of cultivating wisdom and overcoming evil. The Buddha's teachings show us that wisdom, when practiced with integrity, leads to a life of peace, freedom, and compassion. By understanding the nature of suffering and the causes of evil, we can transform our minds and actions, living in a way that promotes harmony and well-being for all. As we reflect on these teachings, let us remember that the path to inner peace is a lifelong journey. It requires effort, mindfulness, and dedication. But with each step we take toward wisdom, compassion, and non-violence, we move closer to liberation, not just for ourselves, but for all beings.